Right, well, welcome back to the TriPOD podcast with me, Kevin Owens, and Matthew Newman's joining us today. What was the last podcast we did?
Well, the last one we recorded, people haven't seen yet, I don't think, when we're putting this one out, but we recorded one just before Christmas. But before that, it was probably late spring, early summer 2025. It's been a while.
Yeah, so it has been a while, but we're going to be doing this more regularly. Well, that's the plan, at least, anyway.
Well, genuinely, people have asked, like, not many,
really?
but some people have asked,
Your
are you
mum,
doing your
your
podcast
dad.
again? No, they don't care.
Yeah, mine neither. So we're trying to answer questions that we get asked or just gets thrown up just through generally doing our day-to-day job, just to try and advise and help people understand a bit more about how video market and video production, TV commercial production works. And this topic today is exactly one of those things. And the content of this is based on a LinkedIn article that I've done, and we'll put a link in the description of that. But the title of this one is Performer Usage Fees, the Hidden Cost of TV Ads. So, to set the scene, we are pitching for a job, and it was quite a nice one, I believe, because I think the budget was actually in the brief, wasn't it? Which always makes things a lot easier.
It was a very thorough brief, several pages long, loads of information. They had done activity last year that, fed into it. And therefore, on top of everything, they did actually have a pretty healthy budget, and it was all spelled out, which the budget part's the unusual part in the brief.
Yeah. But there was something hidden in that brief that once we uncovered it became a huge problem. And knowing the budget helped us see that was a problem. And it was a strange one for us because you're in a weird position when you are pitching up against other agencies and you obviously want to sell yourself, sell what we're capable of, sell the creative concept that we've got for your commercial. But the pitch has to become a bit of an educational piece as well, because we'll have to talk about this ticking time bomb that's in your budget here. So this commercial idea, I believe also they had a rough kind of concept as well, because what they did have was the need to have multiple actors in the commercial.
Well, it depends on your point of view. They didn't come into it with a concept. It was technically an open brief creatively, but they had created something already, which was basically a test balloon, a test campaign, and therefore it was presented as kind of that was the starting point. It's like, well, this is what we've done. We know that it could be improved in different ways, but really all they were kind of talking about was it could be more salesy. It's like, we're kind of happy with what we made, they said, in the constraints that we had, but we know that it could be literally structured and presented as a better TV ad. So they never sort of dictated how many people will be in it, but obviously as we're thinking about what the creative could be and how it could be a better ad, because of what this particular product is, it needs the human touch to it. There's some products that you can just show the product and show the price. That's not what this is. You need to actually, there's a bit of education in there, because it's not a unique product, I don't think, but it's definitely a product that people wouldn't think of first. Like, it's kind of a twist of a product that already exists. So that's always challenging, because you need to explain what the thing is before you can sell it in the advert, which is usually 30 seconds. And no matter which way I looked at it in the lead up to the pitch as we're putting stuff together, I just thought, well, you've got to have people in it to represent what this is.
And the other thing that was in the brief was how long they wanted to use this commercial for, which was 2 years, which is quite unusually long, but knowing it helped kind of uncover this potential problem. So multiple acting talent in it, 2 years usage. Why is that a problem?
Well, it's not a problem necessarily. It's only a problem relative to the budget. And this particular budget, creatively, we knew that the absolute minimum number of actors we could get into it would be 3, absolute minimum. I could very easily make an argument based on different scenes and scenarios that we put in the script that we could have 9 or 12, but like 3 was the absolute minimum that we had to do, and that would be on screen. But then you've got a voiceover as well. So really, you've got 4 bits of talent that you've got to pay, and at the point that we're pitching, they don't know yet. Like 2 years is fine, but they don't know what the level of campaign is going to be. They don't know how much media they're going to commit, how many eyeballs they're going to get in front of. And as we're going to talk about, obviously that's a major issue. So it's a very common thing for people to come to with that kind of request. Or the classic thing over the years has been, and this because this would be a national campaign, which we'll talk about. The classic thing with local campaigns has been, I want buyout on everyone. And you go, right, well, to do it properly, that's going to skyrocket your budget because that's how they make their money. Basically, I'm assuming that we're going to hit this point in a minute, but basically, the performers get paid for their time to do the work and then the usage of it. And the usage of it is on any campaign that's not just like a couple of weeks on local TV is always going to massively dwarf what they get paid to show up and do the work. So usually what happens is you have a local conversation or a local campaign, you have the conversation, you go, well, why do you want to buy it out? Well, just because then we can use it how we want to use it. Right, but what have you actually planned to use? Well, the first campaign is this amount. So what that usually ends up is you go, well, we'll pay them this to meet the actual campaign that you know you're going to do. And we'll tell you that if you do the same campaign, that's what you'll need to pay later to pay the fees after that. But there's no point paying for it now if you haven't committed to the media. And 9.9 times out of 10, that's the way it works. They don't really want the buyout. It's just there's a psychological safety in their mind of like, well, we've got that covered. But we often have advised people, you're spending money that you don't need to spend. If the campaign goes really well, you want to run it again, great. Then you pay the uplift on the performers, but don't pay it now when you're not committed to the media, basically.
Yeah, because I suppose a lot of people think, well, just use common sense. If we're going to make this quite big investment in producing the creative, then I want to kind of squeeze it as much as I can for as long as possible, kind of amortize those costs. But it just doesn't work like that because in theory, even if you produce an ad, run it for 2 weeks, pay everyone, then 5 years later you want to run it again, you have to go back and pay usage fees to the performers that are in it all over again for the usage. So the fee that you're talking about, like your fee for showing up, that's referred to as the studio fee. And it's very, very, very often the small part of the payment that the performer is going to get.
Officially, it's known as the BSF, the basic studio fee. But yeah, that's what it is. That's the money that the actor gets paid to show up on the set, or that the voiceover artist gets paid to record. Yeah. A little side point, by the way. I think it was I was watching something on YouTube recently. It might have been BBC Archive, but obviously very ironic now because everything on TV is a repeat, like actual TV. But they were talking about how, particularly in the late 60s and early 70s, the BBC in particular were kind of rabidly against repeats because they had to pay repeat fees to the talent that were in the shows. And they just, on principle, are just like, no, we'll put new stuff out.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
Well, yeah, I suppose there is, to the uninitiated, it might seem strange or unfair. There's not many things in life where you get paid for work that you did potentially months, years ago.
But they say, I think that's interesting because I think that's just a simple perception gap, which I can understand when it comes to the clients and how they see this bit of work. Because I reckon all the clients that we've had these conversations with over the year, if we said to them, right, what was the last film that you saw at the cinema that you really loved? Or what was the last album that you really loved listening to? And then ask the follow-up question is, so do you understand that every time that film sells a ticket or sells a Blu-ray or that audio is streamed or whatever, the people that created it get a little percentage of that? Like, that's the ball game. They're making stuff to put out in the world that will eventually keep bringing them revenue. They get paid up front, but it has ongoing value. That's why That's ultimately why Netflix are busy buying Warner Brothers, because the library of content is monetizable and will keep making money for everybody, including the performers. But I understand why, clients who are looking to produce an advert don't think of it in that way. I understand, and I also understand the desire to keep costs in check and not be hit with that. That's the thing that is driving all this, is they don't want to get an unexpected bill later down the line, which from our perspective they'll never get, because we'll always tell them what's what. But yeah, I get where it comes from.
Well, there's also an element from looking at it from the performer side of, if they're in a campaign and their face is shown everywhere, that eventually people start to tire of it, and other people that are going to hire models or actors are going to go, yeah, they're known for that. They've been in loads of stuff, like their face is a bit tired.
Well, there's also the other side that the people say, obviously quite high end, but people will sign up and it will exclude them from working with other similar brands and stuff. So like they have to get the money out of that campaign because they can't go and do the other advert.
Yeah. So how do we calculate then what a usage fee is going to be for a performer?
Well, it's evolved a bit over recent years because of digital marketing and how a lot of what is ultimately TV advertising is now bought and planned on the same basis that digital marketing campaign would be, i.e. impressions rather than ratings. But traditionally, basically what there are now, there's formulas to work out what a rating equates to in terms of impressions, basically, but it's all still ultimately based on ratings. And then you've got the split simply between local ratings, which are obviously priced more cheaply, and then national ratings. So I don't know what the formula is. I just know the websites I use that know the formulas that you type in, what your studio fee is, what the ratings of the campaign are going to be, and it spits out, the answer. So there's 2 or 3 sites that everybody uses. It's just accepted as industry standard. So that is the simplest answer, although I've definitely been told over the years that by one person in particular who dealt with a lot of production companies in their job. And there were, at one point he went, I think you might be the only people in the region who actually work this out properly. I'm sure that's not true, but it was still interesting that he said that.
Well, we'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
So looking at it from like one of our potential clients' point of view then, is that something they can work out, or do they need a production company like us to work that out for them?
If they knew where to look and they had the right information, they could work it out. But going back to this particular example that we've been talking about, they haven't got as far, because they're not at that stage in the process yet, as working out what their media campaign's going to be. So therefore they don't know yet. All you need to know is, because the basic studio fee, at the lower end, in fact, let's use voiceover. There's certain TV adverts that we make which are engineered to run for a couple of weeks in a very specific location. Then that's it. That's job done. They've got no shelf life beyond that. So those particular ads go out on AdSmart. AdSmart is paid for on impressions rather than ratings. So even though they might generate a couple of 100,000 impressions in a small area, local area, and do their job, you have to get to 500,000 impressions before it registers as one national TVR. So in those cases, you put in a basic studio fee for the voiceover artist, say, and there is effectively no uplift on the usage. So there's some cases where getting paid to do the work is basically it. Mm-hmm. But then there's other cases where the campaign is so huge that, who cares if the studio fee's £300, £200, £100, it doesn't matter, because they're getting thousands for the usage, and that's what they're actually banking on. So it depends on what the job is, but yes, you still ultimately, what you need is that basic studio fee and an idea. So I suppose clients from that perspective, if they have, certainly the clients that are used to managing their own digital marketing, because again, what we're talking about here is the quite common thing is people are very comfortable with in-house staff and stuff running digital marketing campaigns, or work with an agency and seeing those reports and talking in impressions and all that, but they don't know how to equate that to TV, which is fair enough. So having watched this, if they know that roughly speaking 500,000 impressions equals one national TVR, and then the Google which website to go to, we'll probably put it in the links, then yeah, you can take an educated guess.
Is there an even like less scientific way to do it? Like if you're going to have an idea of what you want to spend on the media, aren't you? If you're coming up with doing a campaign, you're already going to have that budgeted in mind. Yeah. Is there a simple formula where it's like, right, whatever I've got budgeted for the media, X percentage needs to go towards the actual production budget and the usage fees?
I don't think there's a simple formula on usage fees because, again, to kind of talk about what we're talking about here, you need a creative idea that you're happy with to know what talent are in it. So at the stage that they're briefing someone to say, we want to do a TV campaign, no. But, I mean, people, depending on who you listen to, people used to say, whatever your overall budget is, allocate 20%, 15%, somewhere in that range for your production. But realistically, I mean, production techniques are cheaper than they used to be. You know, that was when we started 21 years ago. That was still a case of, like, if you're making a TV ad, you probably went and, you know, hired an edit suite somewhere and worked with someone who was working on the edit, colorizing it, mastering it for TV, laying it off to tape, you know, all that kind of stuff. All that's gone because all that stuff, you know, we do in-house and it's all digital delivery. So the cost of production has dropped. So I don't know whether it's as simple as just going 10 to 15%. Would be very nice for us on the bigger campaigns. But but yeah, I think it's probably not a bad idea. It's probably as metrics go. But then again, it depends because, like, if you're going to do a really small campaign and you're going to do 10 grand, say, on AdSmart in Newcastle for 3 weeks, then with the best will in the world, you're not getting your advert produced for 15 and 20%, you know? So there's still a lower level cutoff. But certainly when we're talking, like, I mean, this campaign we worked on 3 years ago, they spent 250 to 300,000 on the media and allocated themselves, you know, without us saying 50,000 for production. You know, that arguably was maybe a little high, but it was a sensible approach. Yeah. And it also, crucially, because it was maybe arguably a little high, let us, and this is going to keep coming back to what we're talking about, it actually gave a kind of carte blanche to come up with an idea that we wouldn't have come up with. Even if they'd said 30, which is still a good budget, we probably wouldn't have come up with that particular idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I suppose I'm just trying to think of ways that people that are looking at doing a TV commercial could kind of do some of this prep whilst they're kind of putting the brief together. Because I think putting the budget in is definitely the best way to go. But should that be conversations with production companies like us? Because, I mean, I'll state the obvious here. None of the performer usage fees go to us. So we're trying to work with, and the client that we're talking about here, it's obviously a problem we found that we're trying to solve because we want to make the commercial for them, but we're also being honest with them that what they had in that brief just wasn't going to work, at least not with the amount of performers that they wanted to have in it.
Well, again, the advert that they'd made already was pretty much all supplied footage. So some of it was stock from libraries and some of it was from their suppliers. And they'd cut it together, put a voiceover on it. Well, they hadn't, but someone had. Put a voiceover on it. And there was a little bit of, you know, 2D animation in there to kind of hero the product, basically. So, I mean, funny enough, depending on where they bought the stock clips from, because the stock was being used on TV, it could have been that the money they put into the stock could have paid for a performer for that particular campaign, which was a test campaign. But that doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. That's what they came with. So in the first meeting that I had with them, I kind of went through where I thought the weaknesses were in the existing advert, which was not news to them. They knew that they needed to rethink it going forward. And a lot of it was just logistical stuff, just like, you know, it doesn't mention or show the actual product until about 13 seconds in, which this is a product that people haven't heard of and need a bit of education. Like, it's got to be up front, you know, like you need your brand up front, so things like that. But as I said before, because of what the product is, it's in the baby market, basically, isn't it? It's in the parent and baby market. To show the actual impact of the product, you have to have at least one baby and at least one parent, and probably in this case a grandparent or a friend. So that you've got to have at least 3 people in it to sell what it is, because otherwise it's just too dry. So before, I mean, it's a weird one because yes, they did have the 2 years thing in the brief, but because of everything we talked about before, I'll be honest, I don't pay that much attention to that, because I know that the conversation we're going to have is, well, I know you want it for 2 years, but here's what we're talking about now. We've priced it for 6 months or whatever your campaign is, and that's what you'll pay afterwards. It was more like, as we then got into the creative ideas, it was very restrictive to have to work with 3 people, because even putting because you've already got a 4th person with a voiceover, so even putting a 5th person in, a 4th person on screen, even at a sensible estimate of what the campaign spend was going to be in the first flush of it, it was just, we could have very easily spent their entire budget on performers before we did anything.
Yeah,
which obviously wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Well, I know you've touched on all this already, but so what options do people have to kind of, if the usage fees are going to basically potentially kill the campaign, or at least what they've initially planned to do, what options have they got from there?
Well, we will always, as a start, when we're casting something, we'll always go to agencies first. And obviously, they're negotiating on behalf of their clients. They're using the same information I'm using. So before I pick up the phone, I know roughly what they're going to quote me back. And there's a little bit of negotiation. But, obviously, there's many benefits of working that way. You get your pick of who you want. You know that everyone's of a certain stuff, all that kind of stuff. And that is the preferred way of working. And most of the time, we'll make it work that way. And within that, there's different types of agencies. Obviously, you have kind of long established, all-purpose agencies, and you've got kind of smaller boutique agencies like that just do background extras or that kind of thing. If the budget doesn't work going that route, then it's basically back onto us to find someone, of which there's kind of 2 primary routes into doing that. The first route is to use websites where people are presenting themselves for these opportunities and they don't have an agent. That's the whole point of it. So they're obviously less experienced, but in a lot of cases they've still done a lot of things. They still have quite impressive CVs, but for whatever reason, they're just they're certainly not full time doing it. They've got other things going on, but they want to be available to do stuff. So that is kind of probably the next obvious option. And then the third option is to go to your personal network, or put stuff out in the world, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, and just kind of put an open brief out and see what people come back. Because at the end of the day, then obviously and this is always, we're always being transparent with the client over this. We're always telling them which route we're going down, but doing it that third way, and we've had plenty of success doing it that way, but obviously the biggest risk is, well, it takes a lot more time. It's a lot harder to find the right people, and you've always got the risk that because they're not full-time professional or whatever, it's just going to be a harder shoot, or they're not going to get it right or whatever. So there's just more risk attached to it, but those are basically the 3 ways to do it.
Okay. All right then. Well, I mean, I think we've covered everything there. It's not a complex problem. It's more a kind of, it is a hidden problem. It says it in the title. It's a hidden problem. We do come across it every now and again.
I think the hard part about it is, it's one of the few times when, because we know, obviously, and anyone watching this who's ever pitched a creative idea knows that the thing you're waiting for, the thing you're trying to get to, is you've started to tee up an idea and the client starts to latch onto it and starts developing it. Oh yeah, we could do this, we could do that. That's the best part of it. This conversation is the other side of that coin. It's the worst part of it, because it's the one thing that we have to talk about that goes, I mean, budget is just budget, so that there is that, but once the budget is known, this is potentially the creative shackles, and that's what we don't like. Like, we'll always tell everyone, because it's true, our ultimate aim is to make the best possible thing we can do with your available budget. We're not here to force you to spend more money. We just want to give you the best that you can afford. And I hate a conversation that leads to, well, yeah, in an ideal world we'd have 6 people in that scene, but if that's your budget, we can only afford 3. And that's just the disappointing part of it. So thankfully it doesn't happen very often, and I think in this particular case we're talking about, obviously, it was quite a good conversation and they were very receptive to everything we're saying. And it is just about, I think, ultimately from the client's perspective, it's like be sensible about what you've budgeted, and also be open to the advice that says, yeah, I hear that you want to own it for 2 years, and maybe you will run it for 2 years, but let's just focus on the first 6 months that you actually are committed to, because let's make that work for you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, good points. Well, we'll end this podcast here. Hopefully that's been useful to you. If it has been useful.
Felt fairly short and sweet by our standards.
Yeah, well, hey, it's the 46th of January 2026, so, you know, new year, new us, we're trying to streamline things. And yeah, if you have got any use out of that, give it a like, subscribe to the channel.
Was that a deliberate pun?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm still not, haven't caught up.
Oh, we're talking about usage. You said if you're getting a use out of that?
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, if you got any use out of that, pay us some usage.
Yeah, and subscribe. We're bound to hit on a topic that you'll be interested in the future. So yeah, thanks for watching. And
Thanks very much.
bye.
Yeah.